Hello friends, for today's video we're going to be going through some DNFs as well as some library saves, and DNFs is very self-explanatory, things you did not finish, but just to clarify, I am going to mention a couple books that they themselves I didn't finish, as well as series that I won't be continuing on with, and then I like also combining this with library saves from time to time. If you've never seen this, it's where I go through all of the things that I was able to get from the library. Oftentimes these things are including audiobooks, and I like doing this to highlight, one, just how amazing libraries are and how fortunate it is to be able to have access to so many works. As somebody who I've mentioned very frequently that I like immersion reading, it can be expensive or difficult to get physical copies and audiobooks at the same time if you literally buy every single book and then you also spend credits on every audiobook. So it's not just a money saver, but also I find that you can get, of course, the physical and the audiobook from the library. And so I'm going to go through when I was able to get audiobooks from the library as well as physical copies. And libraries are great, so any chance to hype them up is a good opportunity to do so. But I'm going to start with the library saves, then segue to DNFs. If you mostly care about the DNFs, then I'll have a timestamp and you can skip ahead straight to those. There's two main apps that I like to use. There's Libby and there's Hoopla. So I'm going to start with Libby's audiobooks that I was able to get, then we'll segue into Hoopla's audiobooks, and then we'll talk about the physical and one ebook I was able to get from them. First up, for the Libby audiobooks, we have Solace by Gail Carriger. What's great is that with new releases, it can be kind of tricky to get the audiobooks, even if you set to be notified for when the audiobook becomes available so you can place a hold as soon as possible. Unfortunately, because it's usually in pretty high demand, sometimes there's quite a wait line. But with Solace, because it's a slightly older work, I was able to access it immediately. I do want to note, I think library apps like Libby, and for me, I have Libby and Hoopla, and for whatever ones you have, I know there's different ones depending on where you live. The older works, you can almost always get them on audiobook services. If you don't know, Libby does treat things like a physical copy, so they will be put on hold. Hoopla, if they have it in their catalog, you can pretty much just get it right away. So that is the one downside about Libby, but I understand they have to ensure that they are able to still provide funds to the publisher and the author for the access to the digital file. Anyway, so we have Solace by Gail Carriger, was able to get that one on audio, and I'm so glad because I did already have a physical copy, but I do feel like this audiobook really enhanced, to maybe for some people the detriment of, but for me, I did enjoy the level that the Britishness of it all came out, because Solace, if you don't know, it is a steampunk story. It's fantasy. It's got more of that urban feel, which I think is true of a lot of steampunk. It's like urban, but a different time. And it is also very dry, and the British humor, I think, came to life a lot within the audiobook. We also have Trials of Empire. I really like the narration for this series, and I knew I already liked the series because I'd read the first two books. So when the third book came around, I just went ahead and got the physical copy because I knew I wanted a physical copy to match the additional ones. I like reading physically and listening to audiobooks, but I knew that was a series I liked, so I didn't mind purchasing the physical copy, but I did want to also have the audiobook available, which fortunately Libby was able to provide. From there we have Clockwork Angel, and this was an example of one that, even though it's very, very popular, because it's older, I had no problem getting access to the audiobook for this one. We also had To Shape a Dragon's Breath. This one I definitely think had been going under the radar. Hopefully it's gonna pick up and get more traction, because it's really fantastic and deserves it. Ever since I picked it up, I've been hyping it up as much as possible. If you haven't checked it out, I do have an in-depth review. You don't have to watch that, but if you wanted, I have an in-depth review, and it's so good, and I'm so excited because when I picked it up at the time, I was like, I don't see a sequel in sight, and then I did see recently, I believe the second one is scheduled for early 2026, so I understand for some people they don't necessarily like picking up first in series when there's no sequel in sight, but it's in sight now, so I'm just trying to find any reason to convince people to read To Shape a Dragon's Breath, because it's amazing, and it's, I think, completely underhyped. Anyway, next up we have The 13th Child. This is one that I had to wait for a while, because if you saw, I did a video that was kind of a hybrid of a review as well as a discussion about things that end up not really being talked about in certain circles, like fantasy niches, and this is one that I really like this author's work, but I totally missed when it was coming out. By the time that I realized it existed, I was like, oh, I do really want to read this. And there was a huge wait line. So I went ahead and put the hold in, and it eventually came in. It wasn't one I was in a hurry to get to. I just figured whenever this pops up and I can actually have it on loan, then I'll get around to it. And that's what I did. So I'm really grateful because I did really, really enjoy that one. It was one of my favorite books that I picked up the quarter I picked it up within. A Winter's Promise. I liked the narration for this one as well. I liked the book overall, and I will be talking about this one more in depth soon. I just haven't really had the chance just yet, but I was able to get both the physical and the audiobook, and the audiobook specifically from Libby. Children of Gods and Fighting Men. This is one that I'm grateful the library was able to provide this for me. I really like the narration also. It is historical fantasy, and the narrator, I thought, really, really brought to life the Irish components to the story. That said, I'm sad because I'm like, oh, I'm going to want to own this, but thus far, it's just from the library. And I say I'm sad because, books are expensive. I'm grateful I was able to get it from the library. It clued me into the fact that I will want to own this because it's one of my favorite things that I've picked up in a long time. And then last we have The Art of Vanishing, and this story was not necessarily as in demand for a new release as other works are, but there was still a little bit of a hold, and I actually had wanted to pick this one up because some of the aspects of its synopsis remind me of the video game Expedition 33, which I have picked up and thoroughly enjoyed. So I wanted to pick this one up just to see, because I will be doing an If You Like This, Try That for Expedition 33 over on my side channel, and because there were parallels in the synopsis, I wanted to wait until I'd read this before I made that video. I have since read it, and the parallels are kind of there. I would say the stories are very, 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 very different, but I was able to get this one from Libby. I don't probably have to say that every single time. You get it. Now for Hoopla's downloads for audiobook specifically, we have One Last Stop. There was around Valentine's Day, I did a version of A Fantasy Fan Reads, but specifically for contemporary romance stories, and this was one of them for that particular video that I did, so I picked that one up. We also have A River Enchanted, which was a patron recommendation to me. Thoroughly enjoyed that one. Kind of shocked it was on Hoopla. Hoopla tends to have a lot of quite older fantasy works, and then the occasional other thing will pop up. I was not expecting A River Enchanted to be there, but it was, which I was really excited about. We also have Shadow of the Fox, which has been a reread for me, and I did a discussion for that one with some friends for Patreon because my patrons were doing a buddy read for this. So we did a discussion for the first book, and then we will be doing a discussion for the whole trilogy. So in rereading this, it was really nice to be able to access the audiobook. I actually hadn't read the audiobook, I hadn't listened to the audiobook the first time. I'd only read the physical copy. So on this reread, I was able to listen to the audiobook, and it was a lot of fun. I really quite enjoyed it. We also have An Alchemy of Masks and Mirrors. I was surprised to see this one on Hoopla. I could be mistaken. I know that I think a lot of the Murderbot diaries are on Hoopla, and the reason I bring that up is because I don't know if I typically see Tor fantasy books on this app as often, but this one I'm pretty sure is Tor also, and it was there. So I was able to pick it up from that. That's part of the never-ending steampunk video that I promise is going to come out soon-ish. And then we have The Wickwire Watch. This one I was really shocked to see on Hoopla because this is, if I'm not mistaken, a self-pub work. So that was really exciting because rarely, I feel often you don't even get audiobooks for self-pub, which is very understandable because it is so expensive and you're having to provide all of that yourself. So I know firsthand, because I've done it, I know firsthand how expensive it can be. And then additionally, to have it available through apps like Hoopla are really rare. So I was shocked to see this there and really grateful. And I did enjoy this one quite a bit. Haven't had a chance to talk about it just yet. And then Poison Study, perfect example of what I was talking about with the older fantasy works. Poison Study is not as old as classic fantasy or anything like that, but it's older. And I've been wanting to pick this one up for so long. And I was very excited that they had it available. Those were all of the audiobooks I was able to check out through the library. Now for the physical and then one digital book. We'll go ahead and start with the one digital, which would be the first volume of Magus of the Library. This is a manga series that I have started, and I think it's quite good. And if you're interested in hearing more about that, I did do first impressions over on my side channel, but they had the first one available to download. Comics are pretty available on library apps, but manga, not as much. So I was surprised they had this first one, especially because it's not the most well-known. But from there, they didn't have more, if I'm not mistaken, or at least they didn't at the time I picked the first one up. But because I like the first one so much, I went ahead and got some of the later volumes, and I have continued on. I still plan to keep going, but so far I'm thoroughly enjoying this one. I also was able to get some of the physical copies of Frieren Beyond Journey's End because I'd watched all of season 1. I have reviews for that as well as some other Frieren related videos also over on my side channel. But I have quite enjoyed Frieren. I finished the first season of the show, decided I want to read past that, so I have picked up some of the manga. I plan to pick up more of the manga and then also eagerly await, like a lot of other people, season 2. The Stationery Shop and To Shape a Dragon's Breath and A Winter's Promise and Children of Gods and Fighting Men, all books I thoroughly enjoyed, and they're all books that originally started as physical copies I was able to get from the library. I did end up getting a copy of The Stationery Shop at one of my local bookstores. I got it used, so it was, I think, like $10. To Shape a Dragon's Breath, I also found at a bookstore, and I used store credit. That particular bookstore was Bookman's. Winter's Promise, I wouldn't say has been one of my favorites, but I did enjoy it. Haven't gotten a physical copy yet. I'm going to see what I think of the rest of the series before I consider buying those, but I know I've seen it at Bookman's, so there's a chance that I might buy a copy. We'll see. Children of Gods and Fighting Men, I already articulated that I plan to get a copy of this one, but I was able to get both physical and audio from the library. And then last we have Stormglass. Similar to A Winter's Promise, I plan to keep going with this series with the books from the library because I was able to get the sequels from the library as well. So I'm going to keep going with that series. And this one especially is one that I don't think I've seen physical copies of it at my local bookstores. I am now going to kind of be on the lookout because if I do end up liking the rest of the series, I might want to consider getting it. But I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get it used. I try to get a lot of things used. The more that you get things used, the more that you kind of, in a sense, you can think of it as you're limiting the environmental impact of the printing of a book by half every single time that it changes hands, which changing hands is the name of one of the local bookstores that I talk about a lot, so I'm not trying to make a pun. But anyway, if you can find things used, I think, I like balancing out getting things, I should say, from the library, getting things used, and then buying newer works. I try to have a balance because I know there's pros and cons to every single avenue of reading and acquiring books, but those were all the things that I was able to check out from the library. Those were my library saves. So of course, as always, thanks so much to the library for being amazing. Now on to the more negative side of things, which would be DNFs. This first one is going to be a little odd, and I will explain, but I want to be transparent. And that would be Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. I read the first one. I did not like it, essentially at all, mostly because I can't stand the main character, even a little bit. One of the dumbest characters I've ever come across. I really despise them as a protagonist. But it's a buddy read, and I didn't want to drop the ball after the first book, so I am going to read the second book. And it's a buddy read for another booktuber, Erin, from Booked and Busy, who is very, very lovely. And everybody in the chat was so nice. And I'm mostly doing it to at least participate, because there's a drop-off. There's going to be at least one or a couple of people that won't be able to make the second live show. So my plan is I'm going to read the second book, even though I really don't want to. But everybody's really nice in that discussion. So I'm going to read the second book. I'm going to try to keep an open mind. But I would like to DNF it. So it's less that I'm absolutely DNFing, and it's more of like, I really want to DNF. I am going to try really hard to have an open mind, and I really hope that this can be a, never mind, I changed my mind, and I am not DNFing the series. That's what I'm hoping for. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Unless Simon completely transforms into an entirely different human being, I don't even need them to be a good person. I just need them to not be so obnoxious. They're so obnoxious. I really can't emphasize how much I do not like them. But, maybe there's a chance that they will really transform into an entirely different person. But, we'll see. A formal, I am not continuing on with the series, I am DNFing this series, would be The Night and the Moth. I read the first book in its entirety. At times it would pull me in, and then I kind of would lose interest, and pull me a little bit in, and then I'd lose interest, and then I didn't like the ending. So that kind of sealed the deal for me. I can see this working for a lot of other people. I just, thus far, have not connected with something about the way that this author writes a story and the way that the world building unfolds. And that's interesting to me because I find a lot of other people that like this author like the world building and really like the aesthetic. I like the aesthetic. It's just the way the world is built that I don't know. I don't seem to be able to feel as engrossed within it as I would like. And as I said, because it kind of ended on not a bad note. It's not like I thought that the ending was objectively terrible or anything like that. I just didn't really care for the ending, and as such, I don't really have any desire to keep going with that one. And Alchemy of Masks and Mirrors, I didn't dislike it. I didn't really enjoy it either. I had pretty neutral feelings. It was fun enough, but I don't know that I want to continue on with something that I feel kind of neutral toward when there are so many books on my TBR and there's so many books I'm interested in. So I would rather take the time and dedicate it towards those other things. The next 3 I'm going to mention I actually got as ARCs, so I haven't even really had the opportunity to discuss these yet. I will at some point, but those 3 books would be Soul Gazer, Soul of Shadows, I'm looking over there because I didn't want to mix them up, and then also Warrior Princess Assassin. Warrior Princess Assassin was Bridget Kemmerer's debut adult romance, or I should say adult fantasy romance book. And while it did a lot of things the way I would want them to be done, as far as being able to tie a lot of the explicit content to the actual characters and their development, and also portraying their trauma in a lot of ways as well, even though I thought she did a really good job of that, and I thought she took the time to pour a lot of care into the crafting of those characters so that those scenes were more meaningful, I just am not usually finding myself as interested in books that tend to lean more on those styles of storytelling. So it just didn't really work for me, even though I thought it was a good version of what it is. For the other 2, for Soul Gazer, I was invested for a while because the beginning is very ethereal and you feel kind of out of sorts at the beginning. And I actually kind of enjoyed that because it very much invited me to piece together what was going on. And then as it progressed, I thought it actually simplified itself. And then it became a little bit more of a story that I feel like I've seen versions of before. So I ended up not really being as invested. And then Soul of Shadow, this is going to be a sell for some people, but it I think articulates it not working for me. This felt like a CW show. It was campy and it was kind of ridiculous. And I thought that the characters, the way they talked and the dialogue was pretty corny. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun for people. I could see this one being read around Halloween and people just enjoying it. It feels like a show you would watch that you're just meant to sit and lose yourself in because it's so ridiculous. But it didn't necessarily work for me. And then the 2 books themselves that I DNF'd, rather than series I'm DNFing, one would be A Tale of Mirth and Magic. I had a feeling based off of the cover, which I think is accurately representing the time that I read anyway. I think it's accurately representing the book. It's not like this was mismarketed or anything, but I just didn't. I wanted to give it a chance. Didn't work for me. Mostly it was because I found the main character so annoying immediately. And then the other book, Her Soul for a Crown, I actually read a lot of this one, and the lore was really, really cool, and the world building was really interesting. But I actually feel like if it had just kind of stuck to that, I probably would have been more invested. It was actually when the characters came together and their worlds were colliding and their interactions with each other, I found so grating that I didn't want to keep going because I was like, I can't ever, because it's a fantasy romance. So I knew that we were going to get to a point where these characters were going to have a romantic plot line. And I'm like, there's not enough book left for me to get. I know I'm not going to be able to get on board because I don't like the way that they are with each other. It's mostly actually on the main character's part. It's actually dual perspective. So I should clarify, like the female protagonist in the story, she was frustrating to see as far as how she interacted with the other character. And I thought she was kind of irrational and she didn't really think things through. I wouldn't say, though, anybody annoyed me as much as Simon in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. Takes the cake for most annoying character that I have come across in a very long time. But that's it for some library saves and some DNFs. And we'll see. I really hope that this will be incorrect and I will love the second book in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn so much that I will want to read the third one / third and fourth, depending on how you look at it, since it's been split up. But I don't know. We'll find out. I will, of course, mention my used bookstores and my library. I'll have anything like that linked in the description bar. If I've done reviews or anything that are relevant to the things I mentioned, I'll have those links. Thanks so much for watching, though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.